What's up guys, I'm Sega Lord X, and in this episode we're going to be talking about Sega Ages on the Sega Saturn. Now there were 13 games in this series for the Saturn, and most of them would be released in Japan. Now I'm going to split this into two parts, so we're going to see half of the games now, and we're going to see the other half in a future episode. Let's get started. There are two puzzle and action games in the Sega Ages series on the Saturn. There is Tantar, released in May of 1996, and there is Ichident R, released in December that same year. These two games are largely played the same, consisting of mini-games of various types. Tantar is centered around the Bonanza Brothers crime theme, while Incident R was a medieval theme. Some of the mini-games can hold your interest for a few minutes, and if you have a child to play with, that can help. Both games have a pretty large language barrier and heavy Japanese text, but can be figured out with multiple plays. I never found these games to be particularly good or replayable, however, so I can't say I recommend them. They are curiosities from Sega's arcade days and little more. Dropped in August of 1996 was Space Harrier, and hot damn did the Saturn version of this game turn out awesome. Smooth as butter and sounding great, all the speed and action from the arcade original is right here. This is one of the Sega arcade games that just floored me as a kid, and there was simply nothing like it at the time. It's ultra colorful, hard as hell, and has a soundtrack you can't help but love. The Saturn version also uses the Mission Flight Stick controller, which it was packed in with in Japan. This gives the game a great authentic arcade feel, as the original cabinets used similar style sticks for movement. It's one of the best versions of this game ever released, and a must-own if you're a fan. In September of 1996, Sega would right the wrongs of the Genesis and Mega Drive releases and give the world the home version of Outrun it always deserved. If you have been a fan of Sega's long enough, you know that Outrun is one of the best pure arcade racers of its era. Its gameplay is set up to take the player across various settings and terrains, allowing you the choice of where you are going. This gives Outrun fantastic replay value, as you can see many different combinations of stages, even with multiple playthroughs. Outrun has always been a good-looking game, and the Saturn version here does the arcade justice. It's fast, smooth, and the scaling looks spot on. Not to be outdone, Outrun on the Saturn has a soundtrack from the gods. The arcade music is here, as well as the arranged versions for your enjoyment. Please note that the arranged tracks were removed from the Working Design Sega Ages compilation released in the West, making the standalone Japanese release the definitive version of the game. This is another superscalar classic for the Saturn, and another must-own for fans of the arcade. Released in September of 1996, Afterburner 2 would grace the Saturn with its brand of controlled chaos. There's been a ton of versions of this game out there, and this one is one of the best. Much like the Sega Ages ports of Space Harrier and Outrun, Afterburner 2 here is fast, smooth, colorful, and runs fantastic. I always loved this game's soundtrack, and the Saturn version doesn't disappoint there either. Every piece of music fits the game, and is truly epic during its intense battles. Love it or hate it, you have to respect the quality of the port here. Afterburner has always been the popcorn equivalent of a video game. There isn't a ton of substance to it, but when you get in the mood for it, it can be a great way to pass 15 minutes. Sega would release one of my favorite shoot-'em-ups on the Saturn in February of 1997. Fantasy Zone would arrive arcade perfect and fun as hell. The cotton candy graphics seem to turn many off from giving this classic a try, but don't let the rainbow palette fool you. Fantasy Zone is a deep shooter with great challenge and awesome boss fights. The power-up system relies on you collecting money to upgrade your ship, and you're going to need all the help you can get as the game progresses. The music here is upbeat and happy, fitting the visual theme extremely well. It would have been nice to have included the Mega Drive exclusive Super Fantasy Zone as a bonus, but even so, this is a great release in the Sega Ages series, and one very much worth owning. Also in February of 1997, Sega Ages Memorial Selection Volume 1 was released. This would be a compilation of older 2D Sega arcade games. You'd get Flicky, the classic rescue game where you play a bird trying to save your friends from ravenous cats and lizards. Head On is a truly old school game that has you playing chicken with another car while collecting dots on a track. Pingo is an overhead maze game that has you battling snow bees by crushing them with ice blocks. Up and Down is a simple car game that has you collecting flags while avoiding other cars. The truth is, none of these games are going to hold your interest for very long. Two of them are straight throwaways, with Flicky and Pingo offering the most replayability. If you have some age on you and played these in the arcade, you may find some attraction here. But for the rest of you, this is simply reaching too far back in the Sega catalog and offers little beyond another disc on your shelf. Alright guys, Sega Ages on the Sega Saturn. As you can see already, there are some good games in this series. And Working Designs would actually bring out 3 of them, Outrun, Afterburner 2, and Space Harrier to the Western markets in one compilation. Some of the content would be sacrificed on this particular disc, and it tends to be expensive nowadays. I recommend going after the Japanese equivalents for the better value. Now, we still have part 2 to go, which means we still have some more games. We're going to take a look at that next week. I'll catch you then.